We had something then that we don't have now.
Family values in America are also on the decline. Divorce rates are up. Millennials right now in America are getting married later. They're buying houses later.
Was a mother, a father, a grandma, a grandpa.
As a young boy, I would see the men in the neighborhood going off in the morning with their lunch pail. But in that house, there was some family.
Torn down, torn down, torn down, torn down.
First of all, welcome everybody to the very first episode of Family Rebuilt. My name is Christopher Marcus Carreon, and I'm joined today by our very special guest, our very first guest, Patrick Wilbanks, who's an insurance broker and also someone who's running a very fast-growing business out there in San Antonio. Patrick, thank you for being on the call and joining us today. So, first thing I want to start off today is just kind of your journey getting into the military. What was that like? What made you say, hey, I want to get into the military, and what did that path look like for you?
Well, my whole family is military.
Really?
Yeah, my dad, my brother, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, even my current wife's fathers. Cool.
So you were kind of bullied into it?
You can say that, and it says so. But it didn't, for me, it was military structure was really the household. Yeah.
Yeah. What branch did you choose?
Well, everybody's Army.
Really?
Everybody in the family is Army.
Nobody has defected, huh?
No.
What would you say, speaking with a lot of civilians, right? Even before going into the military and coming out for your family, what advantages has it given you where maybe you have a conversation with this one couple and they're not understanding what it's like to be maybe disciplined, maybe just telling it how it is. What are some things that you realize, and at what point in your childhood that you realized that you were different from everybody else because you had that military foundation?
Yeah, again, my dad wasn't playing no games. Growing up under his household and that military structure. One thing it did for me, though, when I was younger is that we got to travel. So it was, getting outside of our comfort zone of being where we grew up.
Yeah.
When I was young, I got to go to Italy, got to go to Japan, Germany. My brother was stationed in Poland, and he was stationed in Korea. So I think the military did a lot for our family in the sense of being able to give us a lot of experience outside of, because if you're just raised in one central location, you don't really know what's out there, right?
Yeah.
You think the world is like that one city. Man, I've been all over America, for instance, and like I said, a lot of places in the world, everywhere is different. State to state's different. I mean, heck, even in Texas, I feel like every city is a different state, right? Dallas different from Austin, different from San Antonio.
Yeah.
So I think experience is one, structure is another one, right?
Okay.
I think a lot of families, when they grow up without structure, or they grow up, because in the military, your goal is to care more about your others than just about yourself. So that, again, getting raised in that, having the discipline to care for the little things, right? It's about caring for the little things.
Yeah.
And so simple things like making your bed. It's a huge discipline. It seems small, but it's like the word if. If is a very small word, but it has very big impact because it could change the sentence, right?
Yeah.
I think they're the same thing.
You mentioned about experience. What was that for you? I guess, what was like that big culture shock or wake-up call that you realized that either you were missing out or things were different around the world that you wouldn't have otherwise just done staying in Texas?
Man, that's a good question. Again, man, I really think that if I hadn't experienced different cultures, different mindsets around the world, right? If I'm born and raised in Mississippi, I always make the joke, I grew up poor. I wish I could afford the OR so I could just be poor. I grew up in a mobile-wide, 2-bedroom mobile-wide, and, we had places in the floor where there was no floor. And you're right. I didn't sleep on a bed, I slept on the floor. Because the vent in the mobile wide our mobile home was in the floor. So when it's hot outside, you want to sleep right there on that vent. When it's cold outside, you want to sleep right there on the vent because that's where all the better temperature is, right? So I threw a pole. And when you're growing up in my area, when you looked all around you, that's all you saw. So it didn't seem like you grew up in poverty. It just seemed like life. Then I go experience the world. When I was in Italy, growing up near the beach, going and seeing the Leaning Tower of Pisa and the Sistine Chapel, right? And just thinking like, gosh, man, how long has this building been here, right? It looks better than my neighborhood, and it's been over 1,000 years, right? And so just traveling and going to places like Texas, right? I remember when I moved to Texas, it was a culture shock. Just moving from Mississippi to Texas was a culture shock.
Yeah.
But again, going into different countries and seeing like, there was a statistic that says in America, if you're a McDonald's worker and you're making $30,000, you're top 1% in the world as far as income is concerned. So when you look at other places and you're like, wow, I thought we had it bad. No, these kids ain't got no shoes, right? My wife was recent trip in China, and in the main cities, it's like America. Well, when you go out in the country, man, they will tell you don't eat off. Like if you drop something on the table, don't pick it up and eat it, because people are peeing and pooping, and they don't have sanitation, criteria for their life.
Yeah.
I guess where you go, kids walk around with no Pampers on, and they're just literally just walking in like an animal, just pooping and peeing right there as they're walking, and it culture shock. Like we think we have it bad, but we don't have a phone for a couple of hours. Or right now with Houston, there's no power, and but there's a lot of people growing up like that in the world right now on a normal basis. So we don't realize that that's a first world problem. Right. So,
for you and your kids, man. So for personal experience, my dad served in the Navy, and he'd say what's funny is because if he was right here, we would say the exact same things about experience and structure in your life, and we'll get to structure later. But for you personally, was there ever a time where your kids didn't want to listen to you as far as like, yeah, you know what, Dad? And in your mind, you're thinking, I don't think these kids realize how good they have it sometimes.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
What were some experiences like that with you?
Man, my oldest, so again, growing up how I grew up, I never wanted that for my kids. I made a pact when I was like 13 years old that I would never be broke, because I know what it feels like. And so when I was when I had my first son, we had 3 vehicles, a nice house, right? And at this time when I had my first son, I'm in real estate, right? Just started real estate. He doesn't know what struggle looks like, right? And there got to a point in time in his life where he felt like, maybe I don't need to listen to you, because I look at all these other kids and I'm better than them, and I don't know why you're so hard on me, because I'm better than all of them, and you're hard on me and I don't get it. And so he just started rebelling. I'm like, dude, you don't understand why I'm hard on you. And the reason that you're better than everybody else is because I was hard on you, because I gave you structure, because I gave you, discipline. Because a lot of these kids that are growing up in this day and age, they don't have that, right? Both parents are, working just to get by. And so there's no parents in the home. And so these kids are being raised just off the technology, right? And me, I've been able to support where my wife has been a stay-at-home mom since I've been with her. Mm. And so they don't even understand some of the great things they have going for them, to where it does make them feel like they're a little bit privileged. They don't understand why you're so hard, why you're pushing them. They think, well, I'm better than them. Yeah, but Levi, you're only better than them if you compare it to those guys. But what about people who are ahead of you? What do you think they say about you? Yeah, right? So we never really know until you get enough experience. So, him growing up, you got to get outside of your school. Now he's 18. He's experiencing the world. And the other day, my other son, my second oldest son, we get into this big argument, and Levi's standing over there laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing about it? And he said, well, I remember 2 years ago, we were sitting there doing this same thing with me, and you told me that, son, you don't get it today, but you will. And now I'm looking back at it, and I understand that.
Yeah.
So it's funny to watch.
So that. You know, I have one question because, you know, you were in real estate, now you're in the insurance and financial industry, and I think you're still in the real estate business. But for me personally, my dad would teach me of something called the inferiority complex. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but for me personally, my dad would always, there's a lot of rhetoric today with minority communities, whether you're Black, Asian, Hispanic, that you're not good enough, and white people this, and that there's a wealth gap in America. And my dad used to actually say the opposite. He says, you got to learn that when you go out in the world, he said that when he was serving in the Navy, he would go to like the Philippines and Africa. They wouldn't consider him American, but he would reiterate that I am American. I'm serving the United States of America. And he was proud of it, right? And so going back to that, because of your background that you came into, you have every excuse in the world of saying, oh, you know, I didn't come from a good background. I'm not supposed to live the life that I'm living today. Was there ever like a linchpin or a decision that you made? And you mentioned earlier that you're like, you'll never make sure that your parents or your kids ever live the life that you lived when it came to financially. But was there ever a breaking point where you really had to break your mindset of like, no, I'm not believing that I come from this Mississippi background. That's where I came from, but I deserve to be in that.
100%.
What was that experience like? 100%. What was that mind shift like for you? And I guess what was your experience with that, breaking that inferiority complex?
Dude, I got saved. It's like how you said you got baptized recently.
Yeah.
I got saved, right? 1 Corinthians, I think it's 5, chapter 5, it talks about how who knows the thoughts of man except his spirit? Who knows the thoughts of God except God's spirit? And that now we have God's spirit on the inside of us, and so we know God is on the inside. So when I was growing up in Mississippi, I grew up in one of the most racist areas in Mississippi, and I grew up in poverty, right? So, and Mississippi is very segregated. So if you tell me what side of town you're on, I know you're on the black side of town, I know you're on the white side of town, I know you're on the Choctaw side of town, I know exactly where you're at, right? It's like Chicago is even one of the most segregated cities, right? Wow. Tell me what side, you live on the side, west side, I know exactly, I know where your people are, right? But Dylan, in 6th grade, man, 6th grade, I was tied to a tree and beat in and out of consciousness by 10 white dudes that said, you're only half, it ain't all right. And so all my life growing up, I hated myself. I hated my surroundings. I hated all the stuff I was going through. I used to question, why me? Why do I have to suffer? Why do I have to go through this? Right? And then when I got saved, God showed me, I let you go through all that because it's going to mold you into a unique human being, right? And I started feeling like, if God is on the inside of me now, and God is the ruler of this whole universe, everything is mine because I'm his son, right? There's scripture in Luke 15. Luke 15 is the prodigal son. And the scripture starts off talking with the Pharisees and all these guys, the unbelievers, they're in there, and Jesus tells a story about these 2 sons. One son did everything right. One son did everything wrong. But the crazy thing is, everybody talks about the prodigal son, but here's what they always forget about this scripture. It's not about either one of the sons. It's about the prodigal father. And I call him prodigal because the father was reckless with his love for his children. And when he saw his son, the rebellious one, the one that wasted all this stuff, he saw him from a distance. The scripture says the father ran to him because I want to get to him before the community does, because they're going to shame him. So I'm going to come to him first, and I'm going to let him know he's loved. And I'm going to put the ring on his finger to let him know that you are my son. You represent my family. I'm going to put the sandals on your feet because you're not a slave. You are a son. You wear this. And I'm going to put the robe on you so that everybody knows that I'm covering you. And I have you covered. And when I saw that, I said, man, I looked at myself and I said, I am the prodigal son. I didn't know that you loved me. I thought that everybody hated me. I thought that I was an abandoned child. I thought I was orphaned. And when it was the day I got saved, I realized, wow, maybe everything I went through was just to prepare me so that I can have a message for those who are where I was, right? 2018, I'm sitting in Laguna Beach, Florida, Laguna Beach, California, and it's 5:30 in the morning. I'm looking out at the Pacific Ocean, all these $1 million yachts. I'm in this nice beautiful hotel. But the night before, I end up having a conversation with the guy. Hey, what brings you out to Laguna and all this stuff? And I'm telling him my story. And he goes, wow, Pat, you have a crazy story. He said, I have a question for you. If you could go back to a younger you, what would you tell yourself? And I sat there and thought about it. And the next morning, I didn't have an answer for him at the time, but the next morning I woke up and I'm sitting out there 5:30 in the morning and I open up Facebook and I go live. And I said, hey, this guy posed a question to me last night. He said, if I could go back to a younger me, what would I tell myself? And I realized what I would tell him. Nothing. Because he wasn't listening. However, if you are listening, this is what I can tell you. Also in 1 Corinthians, it says, no eye have seen, nor ear have heard, nor is it entered to the heart of man what God could do for those who love him. Right? And my story is in 2004, I was facing 120 years of prison. 15 years later, I'm in Laguna Beach signing a contract to bring Realty One Group. We'd be the fastest growing brokerage in San Antonio. We'd sell $165 million worth of real estate in this first year, right? I went from 0 agents to 80 agents in less than 7 months.
Wow.
Right? Everybody was like, how the heck did you do that? Right? It's in me, not on me. There's something on the inside of me that gave me the ability, but it took a lot of pain, sacrifice, and it took a lot of inner battles to win. That self-rejection that I had to deal with, I had to get rid of that self-rejection before I could get to a place where I could show you how to overcome your self-rejection, right? So I wouldn't have every gift I have today if it wasn't for all my past. Matter of fact, there was a guy one time, he said, you know why God made you, made the first man a farmer? I was like, no. He said, so they teach you what to do with all the manure that happens in your life. Manure is good for growing the vegetables in the garden, right? And so his job was to tend to the garden. And so take all the manure that happens in your life and don't just let it stake up your life, put it to work in your life.
You know what's crazy? Prodigal sons, I've heard it many times, right? But this one was different for me this past Father's Day because for me, I went to Covenant Church, right? And I feel like I relate a little bit to what you're saying as far as the... I realized at that moment that the pastor is giving a message. He's talking about the prodigal son and how the father loves him and that he just accepts him and just says, I'm proud of you. You deserve to be loved. And he keeps reiterating that. And at first in my spirit, I was numb to it. Then all of a sudden, I broke. I just started just letting it out. And I realized I grew up with a lack of approval. And I think you can relate to this where it's like, as a man to your son, you speak life into your son, right? And I had that moment because that was the relationship prior to me getting saved that I had with God. I believed that I didn't deserve to be loved. I believed that I wasn't meant to be proud of or something because I messed up when that's not true. And so my question for you is, you come from military, right? You know what it's like to go through some manure in your life. For you, what would you say to people, men specifically, that would say you being a loving father goes against being strong? You being showing, being there for your son goes against everything it is to be strong. And do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I do. So that's a great question, man. So I have 8 kids. My first 3 are with a previous wife.
Yeah.
And my first 3 sons are very different from my last 5. And what it was from is my first 3, I was bad thought process. It's not, I don't want to overly love my son because I don't want him to, become a pervert or something. I don't want to weaken him, so these different things, right? There's no manual at being a parent. And this is where when I caught this, I started giving more grace to my parents, right? Because I realized, well, you guys didn't know any better. It was your first co-ed too, right? My mom at 5 years old, she put my brother in a car. She turned around and looked at me and says, I don't like you. I never loved you. I wish you were never born.
Wow.
And got in the car and drove off. And I was in that. I had to be by myself for almost 48 hours in the middle of Mississippi in a mobile home. And if you don't know anything about mobile homes, at nighttime, being in the country, You can hear everything.
Oh,
Right? And so I'm a little 5-year-old kid with nobody. I'm abandoned. And I have nobody. And my mother just told me, I don't like you. I wish you were never born. And for years, man, I always heard that voice. When I got older and I had my kids, I went and asked my mom, I want to have a conversation with you. Because we didn't have a great relationship. And I said, I want to have a conversation about my 5-year-old self. And she told me why she left my dad. My dad was cheating. Didn't know that.
wow.
And because I was the most like my father, at the time she was just speaking emotional. It wasn't true. It was emotions. Right? And when I could understand that, I could forgive her. Because I didn't know what you were going through. I'm a 5 kid, right? So when I'm raising my first 3, man, I wasn't very affectionate for it. My younger 5 is super affectionate. I tell my kids I love them all the time, right? And what I realize is it actually builds more confidence in your kids.
Wow.
See, the struggles that we have in life is because our parents didn't validate that, son, you can do it. Because we're scared. And I remember as being a young, first-time father with my first 3, there would be times where I would want to say, I love you, I want to, I would want to, and I could feel something on the inside of me that wouldn't let me, I was like this push to say I love you, and instead of saying it, all right, buddy, right?
That's crazy.
But when I could understand, no, man, that's why you struggle, Pat. You need to tell them. You need to confirm to them. You know what makes kids awesome? It is that when they're young, they believe they can do anything. They believe they could be Superman. They go put the cape on, right? They're running around. They're the most imaginative kids. There's nothing that holds them back. You know what starts to hold them back? Get off that table. Stop doing that. Quit that. You know you'll never do that. You know you'll never be able to, right? And so what happens is, as kids, we believe our parents are telling us the right thing. And sometimes they're not. Because sometimes they're broken too. And you have to get to a place where you could be self-sufficient, self-aware. And that's what that me getting saved, that's what helped me. I became self-aware. I became aware of what my upline, my father, my mother, all them, right, influenced me, and how well I influence my kids, right? And it's a little thing. And so now, as you see me, and you see my oldest son, my 18-year-old, and how I talk to him, and now I have him in business with me, and he's an 18-year-old entrepreneur, right? But that's because I started telling him, maybe you can do anything you want, you just got to get focused. Maybe you can be powerful, but you got to want it, right? And now I'm speaking more life into him, but I didn't always do that. But it's because I'm growing as a parent every day, man. I'm growing as a parent every day.
There's 2 things I want to highlight here, right? One thing on Levi, and the other one specifically is found family. Because I'd imagine between the moment where you became a father, where you got saved, and the moment that your mother had that conversation with you emotionally, there was times where during Christmas, during Thanksgiving, you're like, man, I wish I had a mom like that, right? And maybe there were 1, 2, 3, maybe 10 people in your life that were motherly figures for them. And for you, it was your way of being able to heal emotionally and spiritually. Was there ever people like that in your life? And how did you approach them, and how that conversation come up about you being vulnerable about your relationship with your mother?
Not growing up, no. Not growing up. I take that back. I had one lady. Her name is Miss Johnson, right? She was, I call her my mother. She helped raise I call her my grandmother. We call her Momo. It's like my grandmother. But she kind of influenced my dad and helped him. But yeah, I'd go over there and they'd be disciplined. That's actually why when I was young, when I was 13 years old, my dad actually threw me in jail for listening to a rap song.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the kind of household I grew up in, right? He heard me listening to a rap song, came in there and choke slammed me against the wall and flipped me over and threw me on the ground, called the cops, and said, come get this kid before I beat him up. And they sent me to jail, and then they sent me to it was like an insane asylum. But the crazy part is my bunkie in the insane asylum was a kid named, I forgot his first name, but his last name was Kilpatrick. And I'm like, dude, y'all, no way that y'all put this guy in my room. And this guy's actually crazy. Like 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd be in his bed like, blah, blah, blah.
Oh my gosh. Not speaking in tongues though, right?
I'm like, but I don't know why I'm here. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not, you know what I mean? And it drove me to be this, like, I don't need nobody. Nobody loves me anyways. So why do I care about your opinion? All this stuff. And so I was a very violent, aggressive, and very unloving person, right? Again, when I got saved. And then even when I got saved, man, I got to work out this is a salvific process, which means it takes time. You're not just going to change overnight and everything. You're going to be holy roly, right? There's still residue of old you in there. And so my first marriage, it did not end very well, right? But when I met my second wife, I met her at the church, actually. And this wife has helped me elevate and learn how to love. She's the one that said, Pat, I realize you don't really tell your kids you love them that much. I said, well, nobody told me they love me. Look how I turned out. I'm all right. Are you though? Dang. Are you? Right? And so the person that I have in my life right now is my wife. This woman embodies Christ. She's the one that helped me understand, like, and then that's why I'm so loving with my kids now. I come home and she makes it easy for me to love my family. Right? She makes it easy for me because I'm a workaholic too, because I have 8 kids. I ain't got time to sit around. But she lets me go hustle. And then when I come home, I don't have to worry about home stuff. She wants me to focus on learning how to love my kids. Dude, it's changed everything for me. It's why I am where I'm at.
There's phenomenal, man. I could go on to the wife, but like this one's a little bit interesting. Levi, right? 2 things. One, Levi saw, I would say, would you kind of say the worst in you, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
The worst, right?
I always make the joke, Levi, you were my practice. You were definitely my practice.
But if I were to, like, I've seen him in our office here in Dallas when you come to our events here. And I don't get that. I would have never known that there was a time where he saw the worst of you. Because when I see into his eyes, I see as someone that respects his father, that honors his father. And so for you personally, was there ever a moment where Levi wasn't listening to you, right? And in your mind, you got mad. Like you were angry, saying, you know what, man, I'm tired of other people influencing my own flesh and blood, my son, and I want him to listen to me. And for you, what was that moment of you going to of you going out and winning that made him listen to you? And he had that conversation. Says, you know what, Dad, you were right. I'm gonna listen to you because have you ever had conversations like that with?
Yep. Now, I almost beat him up one day. Yeah, I almost beat him up. And when I did, though, you know what happened? I saw my dad. And I went outside and I cried by myself. And I said, Pat, you know what it's like, don't do that. And I went back in, and at the time, I went back inside, and he didn't want to talk to me. He was mad at me, because we got into it. I mean, we were wrestling in the kitchen, because he wanted to run his mouth, and like, I mean, it got there. And I wanted to put my hands on him. But as I did, I saw my dad. And I understand the wounds that I have to still deal with to this day from that incident at 13 years old, where my dad threw me in jail and all this stuff, right? Still to the day, I don't have a great relationship with my parents, right? And every day that lurks in the back of my mind that I don't want that with my kids. So I had to go back to him, and you know how it's not easy for a parent to go back to his son and go, hey, I made a mistake. How do we move forward? And I did. I had to humble myself. And that's when we started like, all right, let's talk it out more. What do let's be a little bit more clear. Let's be, right? And now I start like what I'll do. And again, my wife helped me with this. She'll remind me, hey, you need to take Levi out this week. Hey, you need to take Azariah out this week. Hey, you need to take Pat. There's a lot of us. There are adults who are broken. There's nobody perfect. Give me grace. I am your father, but I'm not perfect. Give me grace. And when I could get that conveyed to him that you need to give me as much grace as I need to give you, that's when we started to rebuild.
Yeah. Mom, thank you for sharing that, Norm. As you know, marriage is not popular these days, right?
Yeah.
And 50% of marriages they don't last. But I think 65 is raised. When did it get raised?
Yeah, it's like either 65%. He's like, it's up there.
Okay. But
More than that.
what I think is beautiful today, though, is blended families. I think it's very beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing, right? And for you, to someone who's considering getting married with someone who this is not their first marriage, that has a child, with Levi specifically, what were some things that, from what conversations you had with them about getting to know his siblings, right? His not maybe newer siblings or siblings coming into the marriage, and also his relationship with his stepmom or mom. What was that like for Levi?
Man, for first 5 years or so, I'm not calling you mom. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, what's up, Ashley? Right? And then one day, I don't know, man, one day it clicked for him and he called her mom and he pulled her aside and he said, I want to let you know, thank you for loving me, even when I was unlovable. His mom ended up being in prison for almost 6 years. And so, and his mom, many times, his real mom was supposed to come pick him up and all this stuff, and she never did. And Ashley would go get him, right? And so it is going to be hard sometimes for parents to step into that role because there's going to be some kickback. It's that y'all don't have that bond, right? But the way that you get that bond is you're willing, and think about something when it bonds with something else. It has to engulf something else, right? It has to decide to sync up and decide that there's not going to be a boundary. As long as parents, especially blended families, they think that, well, that's your family and this is our family and like we're just happen to be together, there will always be that tension because you're not really bonded together, right? And so he finally understood, like, no, you're my mom. You've been here. You're showing up. You're doing what a mom does. You're my mom, right? And I'm always reiterating, man. Hey, look, we don't play for the front of the jersey. We play for the back of the jersey, right? It's got our last name on it, right? And so every day that we live out our life, you might go do business and you might go do all these things, right? You might go work for somebody. You might play for their team. But at the end of the day, the real team is the one on the back of your jersey. But when everybody, we share that last name, right? And so we got to be here for each other. Whatever you go get is to bring it back to the family. And so I'm always reiterating that, hey, man, there's no successful family that Rockefeller, Walden family, that there's no a majorly successful family that didn't do it together, right? They tell Americans to go chase your dreams. They only say that to poor people. You know that, right?
No, I just don't.
Think about it. When you're wealthy, you're not going to go do what you want to do. You got to do something for the team, the family. So the family needs you to become a baker. The family needs you to become a lawyer. The family needs you to become this because we're trying to push the family legacy and dynasty further. If you go chase your dreams, all we're doing is dividing the kingdom. So they tell poor people to go chase your dreams. Why? To keep us divided. Think about one of the reasons the divorce rate's so high is the mother's going chasing her dreams, father's chasing his, their career chasing. What happens? They're no longer coming together. Why, when people come into business together, does marriage, the divorce rate drops from 65, 70% down to 4%? Why? Because no matter what, we got to be in this together. When hard times come and maybe you and I don't like each other, it doesn't matter. You know what keeps us together? Because we got a business. The business doesn't care about you and I had an argument in the car. The business doesn't care about that I hurt your feelings yesterday. So what keeps you together is y'all have a common goal, a common mission. And that's why divorce rates go from 65, 70% in the average world down to 4% when they come together in entrepreneurship, because you're building together. And when you do that with your family, that's why when my kids, I never pushed on them to go to college and go to do this. I never pushed that. You know what I kept pushing? Hey man, this is what I'm doing. Look how powerful it is. Join me. Let me show you what we do, right? When Levi graduated, he joined me in business, right? And so even when he was in high school, one of the greatest compliments I got was the principal of the school. They had got into some trouble. And he said, man, I would never have thought your son would have gotten in trouble. He said, matter of fact, your son is like the boss of the school. He can tell kids, go do this, go do that. I thought this kid was a shot caller. Like, he said, because your kid is such an entrepreneur. Right? Another thing, man, we ship our kids off all day at school. Then they come home, we're still not home, go hang out with their friends, right? They said that the average family in America spends about 30 minutes to an hour with their kids a day.
Wow.
Right? I said, that's not gonna be me. My kids, when I was in real estate, it was in the back of the car with me, and we're gonna go show houses together. And if I don't gotta show a house, hey, how about you get out? I'll film you. You talk about the open house coming up. You talk about, this new listing, and they're already getting comfortable being in front of a camera, already getting comfortable marketing and advertising, right? Why? Because I want my kids to understand this is what I'm trying to build for our family. And if you really want to be part of the family, I need you to do this. If you don't worry. Go do you, and you don't need to partake in anything in my trust or nothing. Because the Rockefellers, if you don't do what they want, guess what the Rockefellers going to do? Excommunicate you. Because we have a goal. Stay with the goal.
Do you really think there's a wealth gap in America? Like, do you think that's a valid statement, or do you think that's a myth?
Oh, there's a wealth gap. But it comes from, some of it was from systemic racism years ago. Some of it's still the residual of it still today. But I'm going to be honest with you. Most of it's from lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
You want to be ignorant. And I say you want to be ignorant because the average American today is spending 6 hours on social media or watching 6 hours of TV. They could have been using that time to get financially literate. Instead, they just sit there and waste their time. The wealth gap that we have today is because too many people have been already brainwashed to believe that the job is going to do it. And they don't understand how money works. I had a conversation with a lady the other day. She's like, inflation's good. It means the economy's growing. I said, no, inflation's bad because it means your dollar is devaluing, right? When the dollar is strong, everything is less expensive because the dollar is so strong. I don't need more dollars to buy that thing. But when the dollar weakens, I need more dollars to buy that thing. So when in 2020, when the average home price was $275, and I look today, the average home price in America is over $400,000. Why? Because in just 3 to 4 years, our dollar is devalued so much. Why? Because they're printing money. 80% of the money that was ever printed in history, right, since 1776, was printed in the last 3 years. So the dollar's devalued. You're diluting. If I have this cup, and if I had something in the cup, and then I just start pouring a whole bunch of water, I just diluted what was in here, right? So it seems like it's rising. It seems like it's inflating. Yeah, but the actual thing is being diluted. And so, most people don't even understand the basics of money. And so that's what's creating the wealth gap, right? Lack of understanding, lack of knowledge. Now, unless you're talking about, again, systemic racism, but again, that doesn't exist as much. I'm not going to say it's completely gone, but it doesn't exist as much as it did in the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, the 1920s. It doesn't exist on that level. So the only excuse that you have is you still have habits or belief systems that your broke parents put on you. They told you to hate the wealthy man. They told you to hate money. I have a friend right now. Well, he's not a friend of mine anymore, but he was a friend for a long time. And he and we got into a dispute because he said, you worship money. I said, I don't worship money. He said, all you ever talk about is money. I said, because Ecclesiastes 10 says money answers all things, right? You need money. Without money, you can't get your kids in the best schools and get them the best programs and all these things. And so you need it. He said, yeah, but it's not everything. I said, you say that today, but in 5 years, when rent goes from $2,000 to $4,000, they say in less than 3 to 5 years, rent's going to go. If you pay $2,000 a day, it's going to go to $4,000. You're going to lose the money game, my guy. And I don't worship money, but you need to understand how money works so you can keep up. Because eventually you're not. When 1980s, there's a community here in San Antonio, 1980s, average home price was $80,000, 1980, right? So there's a neighborhood called Candlewood, Sunrise, and Woodlake. All these neighborhoods were built in the 80s for the military guys and middle-class America. You could buy that home, and it was a beautiful neighborhood. Today, it's the hood. Why? Because they didn't teach them that middle-class group that was striving and thriving in 1980s. But 20, 30 years down the road, inflation outran you, right? Your money devalued too much. You're still getting paid what you got paid in 1980. But everything, cost of living is up. But nobody told you how to go hustle more and how to go, right? And so you're losing the money game, and now you're in the hood. Where you was an upper middle class in 1980, now you're in the hood. The wealth gap comes from lack of knowledge. The Bible says, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. Fact.
What do you think? I'll say this. For me, you know how like Trump is on his campaign about making America great again, right? People always ask, when was the last time America was great? My personal opinion, I would say, some would say the 90s. My personal opinion would be the 1969 moon landing, right? That's why I believe, because for us to go through a space race and beat the Russians to their own game of when they were ahead of us, if you read, there's a book called The Hypomanic Edge. This country was founded on God. We gave the land to God, which is how we got God's favor in the first place. And so this is one of the reasons why I wanted to start this, was because I think that, and this is my personal opinion, I want you to unpack this, I think that we don't give our lives to God anymore in this country as a whole, right? Sure. And so for you, what do you think is the answer for rebuilding America and rebuilding families and bringing back the family unit?
Well, dude, I say this all the time. If there's a lot of evil people out there with a lot of money, the only thing that can combat it is men of God who have a whole lot of money. It's the only way to combat it, right? When you got a guy with a whole lot of resources because he has a whole lot of money that can allow him to access all these resources, and you don't have anything, how are you going to fight that war? It's like going to war and guys pulling up in fully armored ships and fully armored tanks, and they got all these weapons, and all you guys are a bunch of sticks and arrows. You're not going to win that battle. Why do you think America spends so much money on the military and things of that nature? Because we're trying to outgun all these other guys. And it takes a lot of money to do it. Right? So the only way that we're going to compete against this is we need more people of faith to stop being passive, to stop hating the wealthy man, to stop being, matter of fact, I taught on this a long time ago. You want to know the first sin? What's the first sin? So many people blame Eve. Oh, Eve, Eve. If it wasn't for Eve. So really, well, the Bible says that Eve had this fruit. It's not an apple. Apple came 200 years ago. It's not an apple. It's this tree of knowledge of good and evil. When they took this fruit, whatever it is, forbidden fruit. And the Bible says, and Eve turned to Adam and gave it to him. You know what I saw when I read that? A passive man is the reason that our country is
Recording in progress.
A passive man is the reason that our country is being destroyed. When a man sits there and he's watching the world destroy itself and he doesn't step up and decide to go to war, that's the reason that we're losing. And I don't mean like you gotta go to aggressive war. What I mean is stand up for what is right. Right? Stand up for what is right. When that is baloney, say it's baloney. When that is wrong, say it's wrong. Oh, well, that's not, that's not caring about other feelings. Look, I don't give a dang about your feelings. I only care about what's right and wrong. So whether you like what I just said or not, it is what it is. I call it the sin of Adam or the silence of Adam is the first. We have too many passive men. They're trying to, toxic masculinity. Well, no, you know what it is? You don't like those men who stand up for something.
Wow.
You want the passive man so you can walk your sin right all over us and destroy our world. No. Bring toxic masculinity back. It's okay, right? Let that kid know that that's wrong, right? I was hanging out the other day and I saw these kids. Hey, man, pick your pants up, bro. Right? You think you hard because you got your pants sagging? No, you look like a goofy, bro. Right? Like, you're on drugs all day. No. You're broke and you're on drugs all day. Stop it. Right? We have to speak. And I'm the mouth of the South, man. I don't give a dang. I'm going to speak it. I'm going to say it. Right? Because somebody's got to. Is if we don't, they're just going to keep taking over. Sin is like mold. If you don't address that mold, it will keep growing. So the first sin is not Eve. It was that passive man that let Eve have a conversation. Come on, man. You watch this woman have a conversation with a snake. You didn't say nothing? You watch them go back and forth with misinformation. You didn't want to say something? You watched her take from you. Didn't want to, hey, we don't do that over here. Right? Passive men bring sin into the world.
Crazy, man. Well, Patrick, we could talk a long time, bro. We had a phenomenal time. Like, whoa, it's already been a minute, right? But thank you for being on. If I'm in the San Antonio area and I want to make some moves with you in business where you've helped people make additional money on the side and transition careers, where can I find you on social media? Where can I reach out to you?
Yeah, Humble Affluence. At Humble Affluence. AFFLUENCE.
I love it, man. I love it. Looking forward to seeing you in August, man. Thank you for being on, and we'll see you next time, man. Take care.